All right. Hello and welcome everybody to the Next Level Quad Pod. I'm Greg, joined by James, Marilyn, and Rich. What's up, everybody?
Hello.
Heyo.
I didn't want to interrupt. But
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. It's Friday, St. Patrick's Day at almost 7 o'clock, and instead of being out at a bar, we're sitting here recording a podcast.
It's kind of like the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Could get wild here.
It could. The brewery in Westwood was jamming at
really?
4 o'clock today when I drove by.
4 o'clock.
Live music. They had the doors open and up. It was, they were getting ready to go. So by like 10 o'clock, I wouldn't drive past that place. It could be ugly.
Pearl River is going to be crazy, right?
yeah,
Does Pro River do their thing on St. Patty's Day? Or they
I don't
usually,
know.
I feel like they do it the week before, so it's not overlapping with Hoboken's St. Patty's Day. I don't know. They don't always do it on St. Patty's Day, but I guess it would be on a Friday, maybe.
Maybe.
It's a big deal now.
We can go check it out after.
Yeah, you can just hop on that train that drove by. All right, so this is episode 3 of our 3-part series on how to train for triathlon. 2 weeks ago, we did the swim. Last week, we talked a little bit about the bike. When we went back and listened to it, we didn't cover as much bike training as we probably had planned to originally, but it was a good conversation. We talked about a lot of different topics that are important for your cycling, but we didn't talk about like the nuts and bolts of how to train, what to be doing, as much as we had planned to. So because a lot of the run and swim stuff, or the run and the bike stuff, overlap as far as intensity zones and duration and stuff like that, I think most of the stuff we talk about will apply to both of those, bike and run, as we go over them. So we'll kind of make note if there's any differences between them, but otherwise, most of the stuff we talk about for the run will be applicable to what you do on the bike. So,
Did you guys talk about toys for the bike training? Like we talked about toys for the swim?
no,
What toys do you play
No,
with?
what do you play with?
Well,
I'm kind of scared to hear this answer.
I think so when I first started,
The snorkel.
I didn't have a smart trainer. It was I had like a dumb trainer.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't training power. And so one of the biggest, I think, upgrades, and I think that's really been helping my bike training, is
Having a smart trainer.
smart trainer with
Yeah.
power,
Yeah,
and
we-
then controlled by.
We did talk about that a little bit.
Yep.
What's really funny is, as I was listening to the swim one, we actually, in the swim podcast, we talked about James potentially drowning and not being here
And
for
then
the
he
next
didn't
episode.
come.
And then you weren't on the next episode. And
Yeah.
somehow
prophecy.
we missed that point.
I think
We
we
could've
forgot that we had said
totally.
He's
yeah.
been revived.
Yeah.
He's been revived. He's back from his near drowning. How's the snorkel going in the pool, James? I know you're working on it.
that. He is.
I'm at
You
20% now. So I was 10% last
How
week.
do you measure percent with a snorkel?
Level of panic. I'm now, so I did figure out water gets in because it has that little check valve on the bottom.
Bottom.
When I'm underwater, it's fine. It doesn't do anything. But
Okay.
it's that transition from the wall when it goes from underwater and I come out. I'm either breathing or breathing in.
First.
Yeah.
It'll suck in water at that point because like the water's running down the outside, and then it's not. I guess it's just the pressure.
So I guess if the purge valve isn't underwater, when it goes under, some water might get in around the kind of like the mushroom valve.
Well, when you go out of the water, I guess there's no resistance with the air because it's a lot easier to suck in. So then the water's getting in there, and then as soon as I go under, then it's like in there. So now
you can't take that breath in the wall.
no, take the breath or stay submerged.
Yeah, and it's probably just that purge valve that
I just have
needs
to
stay
leave that.
under.
So I kind of do this weird, like keep my head
Yeah,
under when I'm doing that turn. So right now I'm doing like slow turns off the wall. I'm not ready to do a flip turn with a.
yeah. Let's
a
hold off
snorkel
on
yet.
that for a little while.
But I'm getting more comfortable when that water does get in there. I've figured out I don't have to like be like a whale and blow as hard as I can to just get that. Like there's a little breath out will make it come out of that little purge valve.
Right.
And so now I'm like not getting into more of a panic state. So it's getting better. So
So we're at 20%.
you should try it. It's not if I can
have
start getting
enough on
better.
my hands.
And I think it's helping my stroke. I'm like, I don't I'm not turning, and because
Well, you could see better what you're doing, right?
yes, and my breathing timing is
your
not the greatest. I always turn early.
timing. Yeah.
So now that I'm not doing that because it's snorkel, then I can focus more on completing the run.
Yeah.
And then I can focus more on the run. So I kind of do this weird, like keep my head my breathing side stroke. So now I'm able to reach, pull all the way, push to my hip.
That I could see.
Yeah.
Yeah, the snorkel is a great tool. Definitely something you should be using to just get a good feel for all that stuff. So
I feel like we're still not talking about the bike.
Anything around everything about the bike. Any other bike toys, James? Other than
I think so. Getting the computer.
How did that happen? Even I don't know.
Computer or smartwatch to control the
Yeah.
workouts is great.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Heart rate monitor.
Yeah.
Zwift if you like it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like listen to the podcast while I'm on there.
Yeah.
So
We don't make enough podcasts for you to be listening to the podcast when you run and bike. And
I know.
maybe I'm not
Do you
training enough.
re-listen?
You know how you can go
I do.
you can go double speed, triple speed. He goes at like quarter speed.
quarter speed.
Everyone's like,
That sounds wonderful. I'm already self-conscious about my voice. Now slow it
you
down.
have a beautiful
Thanks.
radio voice.
Yeah.
I actually had a friend tell me like she listened to it and she was like, I didn't even recognize that it was you. And I'm like, yeah, because I EQ
You
the hell out of
auto-tune?
my voice. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. when you turn off the filter, Craig's like, this is great killer.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much. Yeah, I can't think of any. I guess those are, tools that you'd use on the bike that I didn't even. We talked about the trainer. We talked about like erg mode and it being controllable and stuff.
I mean, I don't know if they're tools, but we can
Toys.
talk about.
James
they're not
talks
toys,
about
but
toys.
like you can talk about clipless pedals and
We talk
like
about
that
that?
stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, those aren't like training aids.
Right, but
I think
people who
that's-
don't use them, if they switch to them, they'll see like you could train
Sure.
a
Yeah,
little
some
bit better,
improvement and
some
stuff like
improvement
that.
that way.
Yeah.
So there's some gains to be had there.
We did talk a lot about indoor riding, and as far as tools go, one thing that we didn't talk about is fans.
Oh,
Getting air movement over you is a big
so
one.
necessary.
Well,
I like to suffer.
Yeah.
I have a fan, but I don't turn it on.
Oh
it's
my
a special
God.
kind of training, right? No fans.
Yeah, I don't know.
I just need to heat acclimate. I feel like I don't know if it makes a difference, but I just feel like if I can do it without a fan, I will.
Yeah, I won't.
No, me neither.
Yeah,
I'll
use
start
fans.
in like a sweatshirt so that
Yeah?
I can have the
Mhm.
fan on.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like for like the purpose of riding inside, if you don't ever turn on a fan, that room's just going to smell so bad after a
Yeah.
while, right? Like you need the air to circulate.
Yeah.
So even for that reason, you should just have a fan.
It gets so hot.
I'm usually bib shorts, shirtless, no fan,
Okay.
just towels everywhere. Just want to give that imagery to everybody.
Thanks.
Since we were talking about disguising our voices.
Yeah.
My kids love it when I just walk around in just my bib shorts. They're like, "What are you wearing?"
Yeah, they aren't the most attractive houseware. All right, so let's talk, I guess, about anything else with the bike. All right, let's talk about the run a little bit. So we mentioned this on the bike, and we started to talk about like periodizing your season, base building, base season build, and then focusing on your race. We really only talked a lot about base building. So with the run, I think it's the same thing. I think everybody in here has kind of drank the Kool-Aid on nice, easy running and keeping things nice and moderate almost all the time. What are some of the things that you guys like about that? And what are some of the things you don't like about that when it comes to your run training?
Sorry, Marilyn.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No. I don't think there's nothing I don't like. I feel like I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's relaxing. I can enjoy running.
Yeah. I agree 100%. When I was
Yeah.
able to switch that mindset to
Uh-huh.
that relaxed run, I was like, oh, I can enjoy the
Mhm.
run. I can look forward to the next one. But
yeah.
it was very difficult for me and maybe other people out there to kind of switch from like suffering or some kind of like just a hard workout every time you go running to doing easy stuff, especially hard for me to switch. And I was not a runner, didn't grow up a runner, to switch from just going out there running and even easy to run walking,
Mhm.
which is how I train, which is how I run, which is how I do everything. And that made, a world of difference. I don't even know, 100% difference. Then those easy runs also, like you do those and you just go back again and look at it and you go, okay, I can look forward to the next one that's like that. And I think having those and you hear about it, but for some reason it's like an on-off switch. Until it like actually clicks, it doesn't click.
Yeah.
I just did a tempo run this week, and afterwards I was like, I can't believe I used to run that pace on all my runs.
All the time.
All the time. I can't, like, now I think
'Cause we
back,
don't
I'm
know.
like, no.
Because you feel like
That- if I couldn't, or one day obviously I was tired and didn't, it was like, oh, that was a terrible run.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah, it doesn't take much of that high intensity stuff to kind of bring the peak on and get you that speed that you want. But like you guys keyed on, like it's just so important to be able to not destroy yourself so that you're ready for the next day. And being able to string together day after day, week after week, month after month, and not get injured is a really important piece to building that big aerobic base. That, you know, the bigger your engine is, the faster you're going to be in everything. So
learning that faster piece, I wanted to ask if it took me a long time to do those slow, easy, quote unquote, or, you know, base runs to like what you will actually see. I think everybody will eventually see is improvement in your speed and in your pace and in your engine. Right. But I don't think that if you're looking for that immediate effect, you see it. It takes a long time.
It takes a very long time.
Is that consistent
Yes.
for
for
everybody and everybody in Listen Land?
Yeah.
drop a comment below and let us know.
Yeah, but I think it is.
Yeah,
It takes a while.
It takes a while, months.
You have to be really patient.
And I think that's
Even more than months. I don't know.
I think you'll start to see it after a couple of months. But I think the gains can last for a very long time. I mean, when you go back and look at when this Zone 2 MAF training, whatever you want to call it, kind of first burst onto the scene, it was Phil Maffetone and Mark Allen back in the 80s who took this, kind of became this phenomenal triathlete and was running, it's still to this day, maybe some of the fastest marathons at the end of an Ironman that have been run. And he started off, and I think they said he was running like 9 to 10 minute miles at his, you know, top of Zone 2 number. And within a couple of months, he was down to sub sixes.
Oh, wow.
You know, and so now he was able to then run a marathon at the end of Ironman at 240. I think he ran 240 at Kona.
God.
You know, like that's kind of impressive to see just how big that engine can get.
And it's just not like something everybody sees, that doing that type of training will get your engine there. Everybody will think that doing those tempo runs or track workouts will get your engine there, and it won't. You need those long runs.
But it does take volume still. Like you can't
outrun
go out
volume.
Right. But you have to stay healthy enough to be able to do that volume. Right. So I think that's the hard part, is like, if you were a 3 time a week, like let's just say you're a hobby jogger, you're out there running, you're going your 5K, 10K and stuff like that, your turkey trots, and you're running 3 days a week. If that's all you're going to do is 3 40-minute runs a week, and you're just going to suddenly start running them easy, you're probably not going to see performance improvement. Like you might go slower moving forward. It's for the person who is able to put in the volume that will see that. If you were limited by volume because you would get injured all the time, or you just couldn't get ready for that next workout or whatever, that's the kind of person who's going to benefit from doing more of their running at that easy Zone 2 pace. And, I think that's where your base building should start. It can be all that, a couple of strides to keep some leg speed and form going. And then you don't really need to stop doing that until you stop seeing improvement with it. If you keep getting faster month after month, and when you're doing those Zone 2 tests, then why stop doing it? If it works, keep going.
I was going to say, when you were saying like, what do you like, what you don't like? And I don't know if it's what I don't like, but it's a trade-off, is like you have to have the time to put in at Zone 2. So like you said, you can't just do a 40-minute Zone 2 run and expect to get better. Like we're at the point now, we're getting used to doing hour 20, hour 30, 2-hour runs. Not everyone can just do that every weekend. Like, if you have a busy schedule, and then getting some of those longer runs even during the week. So you have to have patience. You have to be able to set the time and then keep yourself slow and steady to do that.
It's all about those trade-offs. Like what are you willing to give up, or what are you not willing to give up when it comes to that? Because you're right. You need to be able to have the time to put in to see the improvements.
So is the metric that you guys are all looking at your miles over 1 week, 1 month for that volume, or not even miles if you're using hours? Are you using it like per week, per month? But like those 40 minutes, right? If you do them every day, you can add up. But what is the metric that people should be looking at for our listeners, or like thinking about as they're doing those low intensity?
Like how long a week?
Yeah.
Just go on Strava, compare yourself to everybody else.
That's the downside of
Yeah.
slow running is I have gotten off Strava and I've never looked back. Like I've been off it for, I don't know, I have to go back and look, but probably 5 or 6 months, maybe not that long. And I think it's a great thing to just get off of it.
I've been off since January. It was very refreshing.
I miss you guys though.
I know. I'll be back. I just needed a break.
You could
You still
sneak
know what we
around
do.
on
I
my
know.
training
You
peaks and
still
look at
see.
that, but I don't need to see other people doing things and me. Like I just don't need to see it. You
Yeah.
know?
So
What was your question again?
how many?
Yeah,
What's the
metrics.
metric that people are
Yeah,
looking
I
should be
track
thinking
miles.
about or
Yeah,
looking at?
I think
on a week basis, a day basis.
I don't think a day basis. I think a week
Yeah.
basis is good. You look at either miles or time. If you're running everything at about the same pace, miles is fine.
Yeah.
If you're adjusting, and if you're moving things around and you have different types of runs throughout the week, then duration is probably a better way to do it.
I think it is a good idea. And I'll give John M., our coach, the
John
credit.
M.
Yeah.
You don't want to say his full name?
Do we need to?
I don't know.
Everybody knows. But I
Not
give him the
everybody.
credit.
No, look, John
Oh,
Mendenhall.
do you want a mug? Like a
So
Oh, you changed your mind?
sorry. Marilyn's joining the Guinness party.
yeah, the St. Patty's Day. Yeah. So like you can still doing those long runs. It does, if you wanted to add, let's say, volume towards that week goal or towards that month goal,
Mm-hmm.
you can quickly add those miles doing a couple miles after a bike or a swim. So like that's something
Yeah.
people can think about.
Yeah,
Like it's
and
an easy add. And then you do get those mileages or times up, but you're not focused on those like.
Right.
So if you're limited by time, which I am a lot, like a couple of miles here and there does help.
Oh,
you out
absolutely.
those.
And I
So
think
that's a good thing.
that's actually, I think, a great way to do it because I think I personally get a better benefit from doing more runs a week at shorter durations. I think now I'm to the point where if I shoot for 3 runs a week, 2 during the week that are about an hour long each, and then 1 longer run on the weekend. But so I coach golf now. That season like literally started yesterday. So my afternoons are kind of shot. Once that season's over at the beginning of May, then I start adding afternoon runs and 20, 30 minutes. And they're just like when my kids are at practice or something like that, I'll bring my stuff and run for 20 minutes while they're practicing and then come watch them for the last half hour or whatever. And that's a great way to boost your volume. Those 20-minute, because running takes a little bit more out of you. Those short runs, you get a benefit from them. Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you don't have a lot of time and you can squeeze in a couple minutes or a couple miles after the bike you do, or even if you get it before the swim or after the swim.
Yeah, I think that was a good point
Just add that.
you brought up is you don't have to necessarily take, like if I'm doing an hour morning run, I don't need to keep adding to that. Like I might be better off like finding time for another 20-minute run than trying to make that an hour and 20-minute run. So absolutely.
And should that 20-minute run be like an all-out sprint?
It should not.
Okay. Just to clarify.
And it is good still to mix it up, though, right? They
Oh,
don't have to all
absolutely.
be-
Yeah, they don't have to all be boringly slow. So
Even within the run, you can add
Yeah.
something to
mhm.
mix it up.
Yeah. So when it comes to base building, we touched on this last week. Like how long do you need to get to a base build? So we're all doing 70.3s this year. Where would you guys like to see your run get to from like your standard kind of say long run or even in weekly mileage? Like, do you have a number in mind where you want to be? Say 5, 6, 7, like wherever that is. Like, where do you want to get to with your running during your half Ironman build?
I'd like to be at least close to the half marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah. If not slightly over, but
Mm-hmm.
close to.
I'd like to be, I talked about it before, my long run, I'd always like to be able to do like 10 miles on the weekend comfortably. And so then if I'm doing 10 on the weekend, then during the week, I have to be doing at least 10 to 12, I guess, to be balanced or safe.
Yeah.
So I guess 20 to 25 a week would be good.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of probably in the same neighborhood as you guys. Like I would really like to, and it probably won't happen for Eagleman, but in this time between Eagleman and North Carolina, I kind of want, I don't know why, maybe it's just because it's a nice round number, like 15, to be my standard long run. I think being able to go over the distance, and I talked about that last week also, that I think it just if I can handle that and not be smashed from it and still do all the other training, I'd be very happy. And then kind of rotate between a workout or a long run that has a little bit of intensity to it, and then just a nice easy long run. And that easy long run is in that, let's call it 13 to 14, 15 mile range. And then the hard long run might only be, 10 or 11.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm probably around the same goal as you guys here, but I don't know that I get to as many miles because of injuries or just tissue resilience, but I'd like to comfortably feel that I could do that. So I'd like to get to that comfortable area of 13 to 15 miles, or I'm trying not to do miles.
Right.
I'm trying to do time.
Yeah. So like
I've tried to switch
2.5
hours.
hours.
Yeah, but also
2.5 hours.
Not consistently feel like my body needs to be exhausted at that point, which is what you were saying.
Yeah.
And I call also taking like more recovery weeks here and there. So like not necessarily just doing that I don't know, day in or week in and week out, but like doing it for a few weeks and then taking a little break and then doing it again a few weeks and then taking a little break so that I can kind of feel, I don't know, I think it would be something I would feel better with.
Right.
So I think in my experience, to get comfortable with having that like 2-hour volume, or let's say 10 miles, whatever you want to call it, is sign up for a marathon, build up to that volume. And then when you come off of that, it's like half the amount.
Easy.
And just mentally, it just becomes
That's a good
better.
way to look at it.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
Why is he looking at me?
He wants you to sign up for a marathon.
Why does he want?
Because you asked, you want to get to that point. I'm telling you how you get to that point.
Yeah. We can try.
If anyone wants to sign up for my programming.
I think it's smart. I think, you
Someone
mentioned it to me. I think it's got potential.
Yeah.
James, you want to share your plan?
My plan. So
Oh no.
I asked Greg if I could feasibly do Philly again this November after Wilmington. So I was like, can I basically overtrain the run going into Wilmington and get up to that, close to that? Because it's about a month between, right? I think.
Yeah.
So I would have to get to
Maybe
that
even
20-mile run.
I have to look at the calendar. I think it's 4 weeks.
I'd almost have to hit that 20-mile run right around Wilmington and then start to taper. So if I could fit the volume, and I have to ask Greg what the details would be, if I can fit that volume in and just basically be way prepared for the run, then I feel like I could just then go right into Philly and then settle my score with that course. Or go down in flames and be like, oh, I really got to do this again next year.
You got to go back to Wilmington.
No.
Shout out to Koichi, though. He's down to do it. He's like, if I do it, he's doing it. So I have
Oh, yeah?
someone roped in.
And you're tied to Philly, right? I think there's another race, I want to say, somewhere around that time frame, which gives you a little bit more of a build.
I don't know. Philly's...
The thing is, how will you recovered will you be after Wilmington?
That is the big
to
question.
then go into the marathon.
That's the
what-
only
that's-
hesitation
yeah,
I
same.
have is...
I would jump on the bandwagon, but that's the only thing.
So if
So
we
maybe
figure
you guys-
that
I don't
out.
think I won't be recovered
Making
enough to
my
run a
life
marathon. I've run a
challenging.
marathon before. There's no way.
Well, what if
For me,
in my
that's
head
how I
I'm kind of rationalizing that the extra biking and swimming, like Rich had mentioned last time, the swimming is a great way to build more base without getting the impact. The biking as well. So we might not even have to hit like the miles on the run volume.
It's not the lead
You
up.
still have
it's
to
the
hit
actual
them.
race. You're still racing at Wilmington, so you got to recover from that.
Well, that's what Greg told me early on. Like I have to choose one to
Yeah.
do well at.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And so I hate to throw away a fast swim at Wilmington and then get a slower time because I want to do well. I just need that 28 seconds at Philly. I just need that.
And that's where I'm like,
Is it worth it for you? 28 seconds.
It is
Wow.
a lot.
to be a sub 4 marathon.
Yeah, just like
Isn't there? Is there another one later? Maybe.
That's what I think there is.
It's gonna
I'll
be
have
cold.
to look at it.
Well, I mean, Philly.
He
was
just
really
has a
cold.
settle.
Freezing.
Yeah.
He just has a score to settle.
Yeah.
Is
But
it Philly?
I
or
don't
is it
even
just
know
the
why he has
marathon?
a score to settle.
Philly.
but
Well,
he
that
does.
I
particular.
had
I mean,
that with a race.
I know
once.
that course now, so I know what to expect when I hit the hills at the end and
Yeah.
Yeah.
save myself for that. Like, so, the strategies in
Yeah.
my head.
Yeah. It comes down to how hard are you going to go at Wilmington
Mhm.
and how much are you going to need to recover,
Mm.
Eagle Man will give us a good idea. Eagle Man, I think, is going to be kind of the barometer.
Yeah.
Like if we can go into Eagle Man and recover within a couple of days by that next weekend, if you're like, I'm cool to go do a long run, I'm cool to go do a hard ride, then that probably bodes well for being able to do it.
Mm. So, that'll be a test. I haven't signed up for it, so I'll see how Eagle Man goes, how I feel.
Yeah.
And then if I'm able to jump right into it,
Yeah, that's the big question.
full send.
Mhm.
And then Marilyn said she's considering if we figure out the recovery part. So,
Wilmington's my A race, so
Yeah, I'm going hard at
yeah,
Wilmington.
me too.
I'm going to need my recovery after Wilmington.
Yeah,
just eat a lot afterwards, sleep a little bit.
planning on it.
I think I'm going to be mentally fried too.
And I need something for that off season.
Yeah, but that's
You're
not,
not
that's
even.
a
That's
month
like it's a month after.
after.
You're not.
You're
That's
just
still-
delaying the off season.
Mhm.
But then there's like carryover after that. Like, oh, I'm like, you're so used to putting out those miles in, like you just keep running. It's like,
That's not how it works.
I don't know.
we have time.
Yeah.
So we go from you build. Oh, I was loud.
Wait, before we move on though,
yeah.
can we talk about? Because I brought this up to you. The run walk.
Oh, sure, yeah.
The Galloway method.
Right.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that was popularized by Jeff Galloway. The idea is that if you take these little walk breaks, and his methodology or plan has changed. James, I know you've looked into it, so you can talk about it in a second. But the idea is you take these little walk breaks before you need them, so you delay the fatigue of running. The thing that I like the most about it is it's a form reset. It
Yes.
makes you stop what you're doing. And then when you start back up again, you start with better form. And so you don't have this, when you look at people who just run and run and run, their form degrades over time
Mhm.
as they get more tired. I think the run walk either prevents that or pushes it back to later on into the race.
It resets your muscles a little
I
bit.
did
Yeah.
I looked into it too, and it helps you avoid cardiac drift.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is good.
It just brings that right.
yeah.
Because I mean, you're not taking a terribly long
Right.
walk break. And it just brings your heart rate down that little bit.
Mhm.
And then it takes a couple minutes to get back up to where it was. And then so you're keeping it in check.
And we've seen all the pros. No, okay, not all the pros, but we've seen pros do it. Like they do
They
it.
are.
And people.
I saw that guy Bobby McGee. He was on.
Mhm.
He was USAT, one of the coaches.
Yeah,
for
he's a
running.
extremely famous running coach.
Yeah, he uses it for his athletes. Actually, that he coaches.
And it helps you also because you're getting those breaks for the aid stations.
Mhm.
So like if you're
I
digesting
walk them anyway. Yeah.
so it's kind of like built in for you.
Mhm.
So if you lean into it and you practice like you race, then it's just built in. And that's kind of also how I mentally do that too, because it's that whatever time break
Right.
or distance break that you take, or we don't even call them breaks, whatever walks, you take in nutrition, and that's how I practice how I'm doing the nutrition.
Right.
part
It
of
makes it much easier for me to do that kind of plan
Mhm.
my nutrition. And I know when we're running, I'm going to take on the odd walk breaks, I'm
Yep.
going to drink liquid. And on the even ones, I'm going to take a gel in. And
Absolutely.
it's like every 20 minutes, I'm taking a gel. For me, that just is nice. On the Ironman courses, it tends to be every mile there's an
Mhm.
aid station. If you're going to walk those anyway, it makes a lot of sense to me to do
Yeah.
the run walk.
I think it's a game changer because I think that the initial thought everyone has when they hear that is they're going to be slower.
Mm-hmm.
You actually can end up running faster
Yeah.
in the segments you're running because you're taking the breaks.
Yeah. So when I first started looking into it, and I mean, I'm no expert. I just read the website a couple times and just
That makes you
looking-
an expert on the internet use.
So basically, you figure out what your normal minute mile pace is, and then you can plug it into their calculators, and they'll break down the intervals. I think Galloway likes to limit the walks to 30 seconds maximum. So we were experimenting with 1 minute, but 30 seconds is what you should do. And then If you're a slower runner or a weaker runner, your run intervals are shorter. So you might start off with a 2-minute run interval with a 30-second walk, and then if you're a stronger runner, you can go you can go longer. So you might do 4, 5, 6, even 8-minute intervals, and then a 30-second rest. And then the benefits you had talked about, the cardiac drift, but a big thing is it helps with injury prevention, they say. So a lot of people recover a lot better from like these long distance races doing run, walk, run, because you're getting these mini breaks within the run. Your body's getting that little break. Maybe it doesn't take you over the edge where you get some sort of injury. You're able to train again more quickly after like your training runs because you're doing the run, walk. And then it also meters your like endorphin release. So according to his research or whatever, it was usually you get that runner's high after, if you were just doing a long continuous run, you get it at the end of the run, you get that endorphin rush. But when you do a run, walk, run, they say you get a mini endorphin release every time you do that rest.
Really?
So then it kind of just keeps your head
in
the game a little more.
Yeah.
And I love, like, for when I was doing 1-minute intervals, the intervals kind of worked out that I'd basically finish a mile in my run interval, and then I'd have that walk. So then for a half marathon or a marathon, I was just breaking down the whole race into, it's just 13 intervals is all I have to do. I don't have to think about running this like long distance, where the marathon is 26 intervals. So I just imagine I'm doing a workout. It's like just 26 rounds and then you're done. So it breaks up that run for you.
I like that a lot too, just for within training, be like, okay, I've got to do, if it's a long run, it's much easier for me to wrap my head around 12 10-minute intervals than it is 2 hours of running.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I like it.
There was a time I was doing a Central Park race, and I distinctly remember at that time I wasn't run walking, and I was running the whole park, and I trained for it, and I knew what I was doing, and I would go running up a hill, and I would pass the same person that didn't know I was racing them walking, and I would inevitably get to the top of the hill and continue running down the hill. Central Park is hilly, and they would pass me. And then again, we would get to the hill, and that person would be walking, and I'd pass them. And towards the end, it looked perhaps, it was faking, but towards the end, when we were going towards the finish line, I was dying inside in every possible way. And that person looked much better than I did, but they walked every hill.
I remember that race.
Central Park.
And I mean, if you're gonna, so you could stick to like the Galloway method, which is a very regimented walk run kind of thing. Or if you've got a hilly course like that, save it for the hill. It's much smarter to walk the hills because
I am so slow running uphill.
Right.
I am not that fast.
Right. It's the same thing like with trail running and stuff, right? You might as well power hike the hills because how fast can you really run uphill?
You don't actually save that much time.
Right.
For the effort burn.
Yeah, for the effort. Yeah. It's a huge effort to run up a hill. So the slower you're going, the less that run walk or that walk interval hurts you. So take it when you're going the slowest, which is going to be uphill.
So let's focus on the walk for just a second. My thought process around the walk is I actually would tell, and I do this for myself, is I want the heart rate to come down. So if it's not coming down in 1 minute or 30 seconds that you're taking, you need a little bit of a longer break.
Or you shorten your run interval.
Yeah, I think that's probably the smarter way, because what ends up happening, and I've noticed this, and I'm very bad at this, is I don't think the walk should be like a lazy walk. Right. It needs to be like a power walk for it to be effective. And like you said, the heart rate's not going to come down as much. So maybe shorten the run interval so that the heart rate doesn't get out of control. And if you need to, you take more frequent walk breaks, but keep them. I think that 20 to 30 second walk is probably best, because what happens is you stop running, and that first couple of seconds your walk is still pretty quick. Go ahead, snap it.
Tonight's episode is sponsored by
Carton Brewing. Augie Carton, the guy who owns this Carton beer, huge cyclist, big time.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he posts on Instagram every once in a while. He's got a fancy bike. He just got a new one this year or last year.
So did James.
Does he do podcasts?
I don't know. We should. I've heard him on podcasts, but not cycling podcasts.
Should reach out.
Well,
what?
You didn't pour anything for Marilyn.
I've got more in the fridge too.
Okay.
I just wanted to have it here so I didn't have to walk.
Gotcha.
So if we have to walk and make more trips.
And so it could torment me.
Yeah, just facing Marilyn. That 5 a.m. bike ride is going to be great.
I'm not doing it at 5.
So you wait that first couple of seconds after you stop running, the walk is pretty quick, but you'll get slower walk. You'll walk slower as the time interval drags on. So keep the interval short and then get back to running.
Just off top, by the way, there's a lot more going on this Carton Milk Stout.
Oh, it tastes good. It smells good.
Yeah, sometimes I walk too slow too.
Yeah, I just walk. Walk slow. That's fine. But it's all right.
But it's interesting when you first do it, you're going to be very self-conscious. Like you're that first interval in this big race, and then like you're walking, and everyone is like running. But if you stick to it, it's pretty cool because you'll see in the back half of the race, a lot of people now they're fading,
right?
And you're just holding that pace, or maybe even getting faster. So,
and I use it at the aid stations because then I could eat and drink. And,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I feel very self-conscious about it myself. Like I was running this morning, and as I ran through downtown Westwood, I like hit my walk interval, and I'm like, all right, I'm in tights. I got my like Ironman chest light on,
Nice.
and I'm walking, and I'm like, oh, there's a car. Like, I want to be like, listen, I'm on a run. I got some tempo intervals
I'm
coming
on a
up.
break.
Like, so hopefully those people who passed me and thought I was a punk, like they listened to the podcast, and now they'll know that I was actually
Of course, they listen to the podcast.
just
How can they not?
following.
you know what my mantra is now? Like when I'm in somewhat of a semi-embarrassing in my head moment,
Yeah.
it's like we're all gonna die anyway. Like
That's where you
Okay.
go.
that's where I go, and it's
All
like
All right, that just got
All
it's like
that got
weird
interesting.
quick.
they're not gonna like. What does it matter? Like,
Next
I have all
episode's
this
going to be
stuff
like
on. I'm walking. People think I should be running. Like whatever. Like,
Yeah.
next episode's going to be like we didn't really talk about the run much. We got into this off topic.
Just do what's best for you.
But
Don't
yeah, you
worry about
talked
anyone
about-
else.
Yeah.
You touched on that thing where it's like, are you like? It's a big deal in your head not to be competing with anyone else and not to care what anyone else is doing. Because at that time, even when we do a group workout, everybody's at a different workout in that week. Everybody's at a different pace. Everybody's a different part of their plan. Everybody's got a different tissue resilience at that moment. Like comparing yourself or thinking about what everybody else is thinking around you is just going to wear you down and not really improve you in the long run.
It's not good for you. You're right.
No.
It's still hard to do.
It's a lot of concern about tissue resiliency.
Yeah, it's our new drinking game. Every time Rich says tissue resilience. Yeah. So I do like to run walk. I think finding that appropriate ratio for you is important, and play around with it. Like it doesn't have to be set in stone, and
It changes as you train.
right.
You start with
Mhm.
shorter duration of run and longer
And
walks.
that's a great way to
change it up.
really build up the volume that you can do. Like, right, if you're starting from at the beginning of the season, like you might not be able to handle an hour of running, right? But can you handle 30 minutes of running and 30 minutes of walking and get an hour long workout? And if you time it right, like your heart rate's still going to stay in that kind of Goldilocks zone of where it should be. Like that's a good hour long workout. And then you slowly kind of increase the intensity or not even the intensity, just how much running is happening in that hour. And you're going to improve from that.
Yeah, and like it's a separate episode, but coming back from injury, like if
Yes.
you something happens, whatever, you should be going back to that shorter run,
Yes.
longer walk, and you could still, train that way for,
Still
for a
getting
long
out
time.
there.
Yeah,
I know for me too, with heart rate, it's like if I hit my like red line or my rev limiter, it's very hard for me to come back from that. Like once I've hit it, I'm done. So that run walk always just keeps me in that safe operating zone, and then I can sustain my effort.
Right.
I just need to figure out how to do like run walk for the bike and run walk for swim, and then I'll be like,
Be golden.
yeah. Swim float. What would it be? Swim.
Go on your back and float.
Yeah.
Elementary backstroke.
The drift, the heart rate kind of drifting up but that's something that I think everybody sees over longer. Is it possible to not have any drift whatsoever
Yes.
during a long race?
Mhm. If you're trained properly for that and you carry out your race plan, you shouldn't see tons of it. That's actually a good,
Run walk will help.
but that's a good metric to use to know when you're adapted to that training load, right? So if you're doing your easy runs and you're at like, okay, I want to get to 2.5 hours, or 2 hours, you want to get to 2 hours, and you do your first 2 hour run and you look at your heart rate drift and it's 10% drift. You're not ready for a 2 hour run. Like you pushed yourself a little too far, and you do that a couple of times, and now you see 2%, 3% drift, you're more well adapted to handling that run. So get to that point where it's not stressing you out. And you can so you're literally seeing how much it's stressing you out, is how much is your heart rate drifting. And then once you if you set your goal and you're like, I want to be able to handle 2-hour runs, once you get to 2-hour runs with no heart rate drift, you're ready to move on to whatever your next thing is. So that is
marathon.
A good.
So that next thing we talked about, zone 2, easy heart rate controlled. We do have to get that speed session in.
Yes. Yeah. So once you've got your base built up to where you want it to be, or where time kind of necessitates it to be, sometimes you're working against a deadline and you have to be ready for a race. You might have to say okay, I did my 8 weeks of base or my 12 weeks of base. Now I have to move on. Now you go into, I like to call it a build phase, where you kind of focus on still general physiology. So in aerobic sports, it's VO2 max, and it's, your threshold is a percentage of VO2 max, but you want to bring those things up, and that's, spend however much time you have, hopefully 8-10 weeks of time where you can build up that engine, and make it just run nicer. And then you go into a specialty or a race focused phase of your training. So that build phase is going to be trying to just make you faster, and faster for time, not just, we don't care about your 100 meter time. It's your 5K, your 10K, your half marathon time that we want to really bump up. And that's what happens in the build phase.
So in that build phase, so let's say your week of workouts, how are you structuring that? Are you still putting in a nice zone 2 effort, and then now you're putting in some shorter sessions or sessions?
Hashtag sesh.
At a harder effort?
Yeah. So the majority of your running still should be that zone 2. And oddly enough, it might even get slower, because now you're doing, your hard workout is taking more out of you. So you might need to recover a little bit more. So your easy runs might get slower, which is fine, right? You're still in that heart rate zone. You're still getting those aerobic benefits from it, but that's not a big deal. So then you have your hard run. In triathlon, it's really hard. I think it's very hard to get more than 3 really hard workouts in a week. A hard swim, a hard bike, a hard run, when you're at your volume limit. So if I can handle, let's just keep numbers simple. If I can handle 15 hours, then at 10 hours, I have a little more leeway. If I'm only doing 10 hours, I have a little more leeway. But if once I get up to 15, I have to be very careful with where I put that intensity. So maybe one hard run.
So can you just define for our listeners what you mean by hard run? Do you mean that in the short run with more intensity, or do you mean the hard being the longer extended run?
I'm using hard. Okay, so I'm not counting the long run at low intensity as a hard run. I'm calling hard anything over that zone 2 line. Right. And then, so maybe one of those a week, and then everything else that you can fit in, easy. Yeah.
So I like to mix it up. Usually there's hill repeats, which I think is a great benefit to strengthening the joints and kind of all your muscles.
I also just saw that hill repeats are good for form, because it
great
forces that forward lean.
It's kind of a cool way to work in, when you start to sprinkle in intensity in that, the end of base, beginning of build phase. That's a great way to kind of transition into it, because you're not getting the same pounding that you would from really fast, hard running. And you're getting the form kind of in benefit. So it's a good way to, a couple of hill repeats is a great way to build that up.
Yeah. And the other one I hate doing, but I think is important, is tempo work,
Mm-hmm.
and then a track workout. So that's 4 if you do all of those, but I sprinkle them in different ways.
Yeah. So for build, I like so what do you guys call everybody's got a different definition of tempo, I think.
I dread this.
My
tempo
Jay's
is
favorite.
slower than threshold. Threshold is slower than track, or I guess if we're doing at a track is the threshold.
fartleks.
Fartleks.
Yeah. Fartleks can be anything. That's kind of what.
Yeah, that's just like running fast from
when you feel like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you feel like fart licking. Is that how you use it? Sentence?
I don't think so.
Have we reached that period in our podcast where we get to that?
Start to get silly.
Where we get to that kind of.
James starts from the get-go.
Yeah. What's what we're saying? Tempo. What does tempo mean?
Yes.
Faster than zone 2, slower than threshold.
Yeah. I've seen it referred to, and I kind of like this as fun fast.
Yeah,
you know, so
that's
it's
a good
like
word for it.
you're running, you feel like you're running quickly, but you're also not dying.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be zone 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the way most people define it, as zone 3.
So are you trying to make it faster, or are you trying to extend it, the length of hold?
Great question.
And I'm glad you asked.
Yeah. I think it depends on where you're at in your season. I most of the time I like to see an extended like time in zone, like how much, because tempo is probably not hard enough to drive those threshold adaptations as much. Like if you want to bring up threshold, work at VO2 max. Tempo is not necessarily going to do that, but what tempo will do is allow you to run longer at that pace. So it extends what often is called your time to exhaustion, or your TTE. And that's like so everybody's threshold is what it is. But how long can you actually run there? Like, or bike there for that matter. Like that's your TTE, and that's where tempo can help a lot with.
So is that like training, if you're comparing to the bike, like just below your FTP?
Tempo is a decent amount below your FTP.
Okay.
So tempo might be more like 80 to 90% of FTP on the bike, and a higher than that on the run, because there's not as much of a delta on the run power. So yeah, tempo is a good thing. You know, and then threshold and stuff is worked at, 10K to 5K pace.
Those workouts I dread the most.
Yeah.
And then when I see that I have a nice zone 2 run, then I'm like, oh, I feel so much like mentally into like, oh, I can do that.
Right.
That's the beauty of having
The
that
different
and
workouts.
the different ones. Yeah.
Yeah. When I see tempo and threshold, I'm like, ugh, I don't want to do this.
I like them once a week. It's nice.
Yeah.
I like the variety because I come from like no running background, so it was always just go out and run.
Right.
And then like when I know that there's so many different workouts I can do, I'm like, oh, thank God I could. This one's
Right.
not the same as the last one.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you can play with them. Like there's a lot of room to play with what you're doing. Like just because you're doing 400s on the track doesn't mean they all have to be all out 400s. Like you can be doing a bunch of them at 10K pace and getting a lot of time spent at that threshold level.
So what is the best way? I remember, when I first started doing the team workouts and the group workouts, and then we get these program 5K pace, 10K pace, half marathon.
You never knew.
And I had never done any of those. So I was like, I don't know how hard to run.
Yeah.
So where does someone who has not, who doesn't know those paces, where do they start? How do they work that into their training?
Get a coach.
Good question.
Yeah. Other than get a coach,
Ask next level.
what's the?
I think you have to do a test.
Yeah. No,
but I
see
think
where you're at. You have to. I mean, that's
where
my
you start
opinion, I think.
As anywhere pretty much nowadays, you go to the internet and they have calculators
But
based
you can't
on
calculate it unless you've done
Right.
a 10K
Yeah,
race.
so they'll say like go out running or whatever,
or go run a
5K.
mile.
Right.
Like you can learn a
Yeah.
lot from your mile time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of correlation between shorter race distances and longer. I mean, it would be, you can't take your mile time
I
and
don't think it
extrapolate out
translates.
to a marathon. But the closer if you can run a certain mile time, when you train then for a 5K, you'll probably be pretty darn close to what the calculators say.
I mean, I think it's to answer my own question too. I think if you just kind of think of 5K is going to be like running really hard. Like that's your
5K is hard.
And then your marathon pace is going to be easier.
Yeah.
And then just kind of fill in between. So you just have to kind of
There's a big
calibrate.
gap between 10K and marathon, but
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at that curve of like what happens to your speed over distance, it's it drops off pretty quick after threshold.
I would say people shouldn't get discouraged if your workouts like that in the beginning, because then eventually you will you start running,
you could do
you'll
just
sign
by
up for a 5K.
perceived effort,
Yeah.
But
But eventually you'll fill in those races. Like you will do a 5K,
Right.
and you'll know your pace, and you will do a 10K,
Mhm.
half marathon, ultra.
But there is, I think what you're saying is
ultra.
there is a like a comparison from biking to running, like doing an FTP test. There is like tests you do
Sure.
for running, so
Mhm.
like you can figure out those.
You could
times.
do a 20-minute test on it.
Like,
Yeah.
Or
For
5, like we do a 5K time
5K.
trial.
Mhm.
Right.
So
And
then
the
I have,
reverse of that is just doing a time trial and seeing how far you can go and trying to improve
Yeah.
that.
I think the only thing you'd want to be careful of is if you're coming from an injury and you're worried about pushing hard
Yeah.
for that kind of to get your zone set. But otherwise, see what you can do.
so in our training, I guess bringing that up, how often should we be testing?
I'd like to say, and I'll get it, sure everyone else has a different opinion, but like I'd say every 3 months or so, every 12 to 16 weeks.
I think it depends on what you're trying to see, what's improving. So I take the view that I want to see improvement in what we're trying to work on, right? So during base, every run can almost be a test, right? Because what I want to see is, are you running a little bit faster at the same heart rate? Or are you running at the same pace and your heart rate's a little bit lower? Like to me, that's a test. I can see something. I can learn something from that.
But that's an inference from a training workout. A test, I think he means, is like how much like you just go out.
Right.
And do
So
it.
what I'm saying is then like, I don't think it makes much sense to do a 5K test or, a 20-minute test during your base phase. Because I don't know that you're going to see that much improvement in your 5K time when you're doing 12 weeks of easy running with a couple of strides here and there. So I'm going to be looking at, is your general aerobic efficiency improving? Like, are you getting better at running easy? And that can be gleaned from individual workouts. You don't have to do say like, okay, today's test day, let's prep for test day. Like you can learn that from what you're seeing in every workout file. Once you start getting into your FTP training or your threshold training or whatever in the run, then you need to start introducing those kind of things, those kind of tests, and they can be structured. And, I think you do them when a tempo workout doesn't feel like a tempo workout, or a threshold workout doesn't feel like a threshold workout. That means something's changed in you and it's time to retest and recalibrate your zones. So it might be every 3 months, or it might be 4 weeks later, or it might be 6 weeks later. Like, I think you have to have that fluency in your training to say like, I feel different. Like this tempo effort I hit my zones, I stayed in the little green bar on my Garmin, but it didn't feel that hard.
I think you can't just do everything for weeks and weeks and weeks without keeping track of every week how things are going.
Yeah.
Because then you end up wasting time. Things may not be working. You want to know before. It's like he's
Before
saying,
you
like,
waste time.
before you waste time. So, like, if you're looking at it at least on a weekly basis and seeing what's going on, then.
So what do you do though? Like, you're training and it's like 3 months, let's just say you kind of test something and it's like, oh, I am not getting fitter. How do you adjust there?
Do something new.
Change what you've been doing.
Yeah. It's not working.
Well, I think yes, but you figure out when you figure out what it is that isn't working, or you figure out what it is that you were expecting, or like what that test is showing, and then you work on that. So if it's your, I don't know, speed, it's your speed. If it's your long runs, it's your long runs. If it's something else.
But I mean, like if you go
figure it out.
into, let's say you finish up your base build, your base macro cycle, and you do a 5K test and you're at a time, and then you move on to build and you do 4 weeks of a build and you do another 5K test and it's the same time, like what you just didn't work.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like something needs to change. You can't answer that because you could be overtrained, undertrained, who knows? So there's not an easy answer for that, but
Could have just done North Carolina in training for could be. Yeah. Could be not recovered.
I don't need that negative self-talk, okay?
Yeah.
Positive thoughts only.
Just could be. I said it's a maybe. It's definite.
You know me. If I have my mindset on something,
It's going to happen.
It's
just
Just
convincing
sign
everyone
up
else to
already.
do
You know
it.
what's
Just
great?
sign up
What's going to
already.
happen is we're going to race at North Carolina on Saturday. I'm going to program him for a long run on Sunday
Sunday.
morning.
But if I survive it,
Yeah.
Oh, I will reach a new level.
We're going to all go to the bar and
Right.
sorry, James, you got to go to bed.
Sorry, go home and
We
go
have
to
a
sleep.
long run tomorrow.
Sunday morning. Oh.
Because I eventually do want to try an ultra.
Yeah.
So like a marathon just has to be,
They just set the record at Barclay Marathon.
Yeah.
Right,
3
3
guys
guys
finished
finished.
for the first time ever. That many finishers.
Is that the one that's in like Tennessee or something?
Yeah.
That's like, yeah.
Yeah, like
Nobody-
you
Is there
camp
like no
out there.
map either or
There's
something?
no map. There's no, it's like not actual trails. You
Yeah.
can't even follow
And you have
people.
to
Like they make you go after the first loop, everybody that goes out goes in a different direction. So like you'll go clockwise, the next person goes counterclockwise.
You have to like
That's
find
the
something,
only,
right?
That's the last lap. So the
Oh,
person,
okay.
so if like
Yeah.
if you finished first and we're going on your 5th lap, I think it's 5 laps you have to
it's
do.
5.
You get to decide which direction you're going.
And
And then if I'm next, I have to go the opposite way. And I think they said it could be a 2-hour time difference in the
Yeah.
direction of the lap.
Was that the one where there's like clues or something? Like you have to go out
you
and
have to
find
get, like,
something
a-
and then it
there's,
tells
like,
pages in a
pages
book
from a
or
book,
something?
and you
Oh,
have
yeah.
to bring that back to show that you
Yeah.
actually were on track.
there's a
it's
good-
crazy.
There's a Netflix documentary.
yes,
Netflix?
it's
Yeah.
so good.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my
And the
God.
guy who runs it is like,
That you don't even know when the race is going to start. So you're camped out, and he lights a cigarette like in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
and that's when the race starts.
Crazy.
It's so weird.
All I know if we decide to do it, Koichi will sign up.
Koichi
He
goes for
will.
anything.
He's ready.
part of me like is super intrigued by that kind of thing. I just don't know that my body can handle.
It's
I need a
60
couple of
something
years.
hours. I need to sleep. I mean, first of all,
Yeah, they're just delirious at
Yeah.
some point.
Yeah.
Like people just, it's mental and physical
Yeah.
completely.
I think, and a woman went 4 laps,
4
this
laps,
year.
yeah.
Was that the first time? I don't know.
I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah.
impressive.
You got to beat her.
No, I need sleep.
It intrigues me. I just don't
Yeah.
know that I can handle that kind of.
Yeah.
But you don't go from 0 to that.
No, and
right?
it would take me a couple of years of like this kind of
For
stuff
sure.
and Ironman stuff and some standalone marathons before
And
I
like
even
map reading.
that I'm okay at. I'm actually pretty good. I don't get lost in the woods with
right.
Yale.
All right.
But yeah, I think it's good to just keep upping the ante until you find your limit.
That is
Yeah.
good. It is good. But you lose focus a little bit.
I do. I do have to rein it back. I think
Yeah.
eventually, like 70.3s, that'll be my distance, and my goal will be to just be fast at a 70.3, and then be able to be like the next day. Okay, I'll go out and do
Yeah.
a long run.
An Ironman next year.
Yes. So I don't think I would ever want to do Ironmans all the time,
No,
But
I
just
don't.
do one?
Yeah, just one.
and then puts everything into perspective. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, I can do an Olympic or a 70.3 on demand,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
that's my new frame of reference.
Okay, so
Reeling it back in.
we're back to running. So we do kind of a build cycle where you try and bring up those thresholds, and once hopefully you get some improvement there, that kind of bring a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. Like you bring up your threshold, everything comes up. Your zone 2 running pace is going to come up. Your top end sprint's going to come up, and all that stuff. Then I think it's important that you spend some time focused on dialing in whatever you need for your key race. And so that's going to be different for everybody based on what they're doing. I don't know if we can really talk too much about specifics, but you really just want to start doing more work at whatever intensity level is going to be demanded by your run. So if you're in an Ironman, that might be lower than zone 2, a lot of it, but lower than zone 2 stuff, or below like the limit to your zone 2. If it's stuff like we're doing for 70.3s, it's going to be lots of like half marathon pace kind of work. And everybody's going to be different based on their event, but that's should be the last kind of phase of your training, trying to become more and more specific about your training.
And how long should you do that before your race date?
It's tough because like a lot of those adaptations come relatively quick. So you don't have to spend tons of time, but like 8 weeks is kind of a good number. So 2 kind of mesocycles, like 2 kind of 4-week cycles that, you can work on them pretty well. That gives you enough time to adjust if something's not quite working. It gives you enough time to increase, the load that you're putting yourself under and adapt to that training. Beyond that, it's tough to kind of keep that going for too long.
Yeah.
What else do we got? Questions?
We didn't talk about nutrition,
We didn't.
fueling that run.
That's been a big one for me. Like I feel like runners don't like to eat or drink anything. My wife, it's funny.
Don't
I'll go
stereotype.
I'll go out for a run and like I'll be loaded up, and Claire will be like, "How long are you going for?" I'm like,
30 minutes.
Yeah, just an hour. And she's like, "You got a water bottle and gels?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, it's like, why?
Yeah.
I think before I
do.
started doing triathlon training, I would just go as long as I could
Right.
without anything because
Yeah.
I didn't think about carrying anything. This was all new to me.
I think to make it through a 70.3, you have to be adjusted to and adapted to eating on the run. And I think that's the
Right.
most undertrained thing that I see. Like people don't, like you said, like to
Mhm.
do that on the run. And and again, one of those easy things you can pick off, low hanging fruit, where if you just practice that, your body will start using it. And
Right.
and,
And
that's
I mean,
important.
realistic, like in a straight up open half marathon, you're at that borderline where like if you don't fuel, you probably get through okay. Like most people have enough
Yeah.
glycogen stores for a
2 hours.
hour
Hour and a half.
45, hour and a half kind of effort. Like you probably feel like garbage, right? At the end.
I
Yeah.
don't know why you would.
but why
do
would
that.
you,
I
right?
don't. I've never done a long race without even a long run. If it's over 45 minutes, I'm bringing something.
Yeah.
And if it's hot out, if it's cold out, maybe up to an hour, I won't bring hydration. But if it's hot out, I got a pack on. I got
Yeah.
gels.
Yeah, me too. I'm
Mhm.
the same way. Like
yeah.
this morning I ran for an hour. I brought I had a gel right before I left the
Yeah.
house, and then I had an extra gel with me. I didn't bring any water with me because it was cold. I
Yeah,
knew
that's
I'd be okay.
I don't even think about whatever it is I'm doing. If it's a longer duration, or even an hour is a
Mhm.
longer
Yeah.
duration,
Yeah.
hmm
I'm just practicing my intake over the period of time that I want to be taking it. So
Yeah.
like if you're doing, an hour bike and an hour run on the same day, it doesn't matter. You still take in fuel every 15, 20 minutes, whatever you're doing. So
Mhm.
you just don't stop that once you're done biking and
Yeah.
stop.
And it's not just about practicing. You actually feel better during and after.
Yeah.
Even.
Especially if you get like a dual carb source, like the C2 Max and Power Bar gels, the
That's what I had
hydrogels.
this morning.
I
It's
think
a game changer.
Tomorrow I'm gonna have the Coke.
Oh, the
The
cola
Coke
gummies.
bottles?
Yeah, I haven't
Yeah,
tried
those
them
are
yet.
so good.
I gave
So
them
if I
to
choke on them, I'm home at least.
I gave them to my kids for their swim meet, and
did you?
they liked it.
They liked
I was
it?
like, "Don't eat the whole bag though,
Yeah.
because it's like 75 milligrams of caffeine."
Caffeine.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
one cup of coffee. That's
Yeah.
not.
But for like a 9-year-old, that could be
I
a,
know.
a
Have you
bit
seen
much.
these girls? They're tiny.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, split this up over 2 or 3 days, one bag.
Yeah,
But yeah, definitely the hydrogels have been a game changer.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah, they're very good. And
Mhm.
they're a pain in the butt to carry on a run though. Like if you need a lot of them,
Mm.
What, the hydrogels or
the
the colas?
hydrogels.
The
Put
whatever.
it,
they're
don't you put it in a flask?
Yeah, but like so the hydrogels, I can only in those flasks, I can only fit like 2.5 in a
Mm.
flask. So
A
that's
bigger
not.
flask.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
That's your biggest problem, carrying them around.
Yeah, I mean, running is a big problem, but yeah. So I usually don't use the hydrogels. I use the regular ones for a run.
I haven't tried those.
Have you tried
either.
the salted peanut ones?
No, I
Yes.
gotta try it.
I'm
Is
like,
it good?
I'm on the fence. I don't know.
I
don't
feel
know if
like I should
it.
be having them not while working out.
Is it
Right.
is it
just-
salty or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, because that's
Ooh.
good. Because sometimes
Need
you're
that
sick of
salt.
sweet, so you
Yeah, I guess for a
want
change up.
something. Yeah.
But I'm like, have it before or after. Like, it's just
Yeah,
one of those.
it doesn't hit the spot during an effort.
Hmm.
But I don't know if
Gotta
that's just
try it.
because I've always gone like kind of down like the citrus
Yeah,
flavor.
That's where
It's
I
a
go
little more
to.
savory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I don't. Yeah, I don't know if I love it. It is a tasty flavor, but in the middle of like a hard effort, it's not.
Hmm.
If I've got a cup, like if I've got the orange hydros and the salty peanut ones, I'm not in the middle of a workout. I'm never grabbing.
What's
the
the
salty
consistency like?
peanut. So
It's pretty good
yeah, it's definitely not hydro. It's like
between a hydro and a
You
gel.
said it was
yeah.
still a little liquidy.
yeah,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
more liquidy than an SIS gel.
Okay,
So
so,
it
you're
doesn't-
not like a goo.
You're
like
not
the
a
goo brand.
That's,
No,
I
no,
don't like the goos.
nowhere
Those
near
are
a
too-
goo.
No, it's more like a hydro, but it's not exactly hydro.
It's like you
Yeah.
dehydrated a hydro a little bit,
Mhm.
More potent.
a little bit more potent. They're good though. I like the green apple ones a lot. Those have caffeine in them,
I gotta try
and I can
those.
fit 4 of those in the gel flasks I've got.
I might have to expand our horizons.
Yeah. I might try them.
Yeah.
I could swap them out for the Mortons.
It's true because my pockets are just like.
Mm-hmm.
But the Mortons are always on the core set.
I know, but I already know I like them. So if I need it,
Yeah,
I can have it.
Greg is just holding back.
He's got his eyes closed, so he doesn't look at me. I've got my eyes like up into the ceiling, so I don't look at him.
I knew
Try
it.
not to look at James. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
For our listeners.
Yep.
It's a whole thing.
Just that one bike ride we did, just forever
Shouldn't have
changed
opened my
Mortons.
mouth.
Hmm.
And if Mortons is listening, there's no
no ill will.
no ill will, no hate. It's just
No, not at all.
just the way the
All good
words came
stuff.
out of Greg's mouth that day.
So is that it for nutrition? I've got a question on something else.
Go
Run
for it.
related.
Nutrition. No, I don't think so. I think find what works for you. If it's going to go bad for you nutrition wise, it's going to go bad on the run, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you need to find something that you are 100% comfortable with. Make sure you practice with it. I know it's tough. Like some of these things are expensive, right? So, spending $10 on a long run on your nutrition is like week after week is, something you don't think about, but you definitely need to practice it. You need to make sure that stuff works at whatever temperature you're running at, the volumes that you're going to take in, the intensity you're running at. Like,
And if you're going to do a specific race and you know what's going to be at that race, as expensive and annoying as it is, you got to get it and practice if you're going to use that.
if you're going to use that, right.
And how you're going to carry it.
Yeah.
Because like we just said,
Yeah.
And isn't there that phenomenon, like on the bike, it's easy to eat, but you're kind of bent forward. It's just kind of sitting and stuff. And then you get up to run.
Yep.
And now it all starts to
move down.
move down.
And if you haven't been absorbing it during the bike and it's just been in there, it's all coming out as soon as you start bouncing around on the run.
Nice.
So not the word I would have used, but
Nice.
you see somebody just projectile shoot like 16 Morton gels all at once.
Oh, you were talking about throwing. Oh, okay.
Yeah. What did you think I was talking
Not
about?
what he was thinking.
he was thinking the
Pooping?
other side.
Yeah.
No, I think if you haven't been absorbing, it's
It's
going to
like
all
up
have been
here.
sitting in your stomach,
Yeah.
and it's just you start bouncing around, it's coming out.
Oof.
I think, that other end is probably more like you overdid it on the number of grams that you've trained your gut to handle. Yeah. So, it could be fun. It could be weird either way.
Could be.
Hopefully not both at the same time, because then you're in trouble.
That's why you train it.
Yeah, you definitely have to train it, and you can like it's 100% trainable to a huge amount. And they're like all the research that's out there is pretty much, I don't want to say useless, but like people are pushing those numbers way beyond what researchers had tried. So, the whole if you're only doing 60 grams of carbs an hour, like
You're behind.
you're leaving stuff out on the table.
And kudos to Rich, like that you said, you mentioned today, I mentioned it before, like whether it's training or whatever, like you always just practice taking in the calories. I've taken that to heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So what was your question, Ray?
So my first one is, we said a lot of the bike stuff and the run stuff is the same. So the bike metric stress score, is that similar or the same for the run metric stress score?
It's the same. Yeah, as long as you have, and that's where the testing comes in. As long as you have and I don't think we've mentioned this before, you need to have appropriate thresholds set for those metrics to make sense. Like if you set your FTP or your run threshold once, when you're like, oh, I ran a 22-minute 5K once, and that's like, okay, that's my
When I
threshold.
was 15.
Right.
And that was a year ago.
3 years ago. That is not applicable. And now all your metrics that are calculated off of that are off. And so now you don't have a good picture of what's going on. So, but numerically and how they're calculated, yeah, they're the same.
And the second one, also similar bike and the run. You have the powers on the bike. Is there power for the run? And what is it showing you? Is it showing you the same thing as the bike or not?
So there is run power. And more companies now have something that can measure what they call run power. It is not, though, as apples to apples as bike power is. So in any kind of bike power meter is using some kind of strain gauge to measure, I guess, torque. And torque over time is going to help you get power, or is how you're going to calculate power. So if you have, a couple of us have the Asioma pedals, Marilyn, you've got the Garmin pedals, those should be reading very, very similar numbers. run power is not, because run power is an algorithm based on the metrics that you put in, and it kind of measures vertical oscillation and forward momentum. It's more mathematical than a strain gauge in a piece of hardware. So there's the one that's been around kind of a little bit longer is the Stride, which is a little foot pod that goes on the top of your foot, and that measures your run cadence and all the parameters, like how long you're on the ground for, and plugs them all into their algorithm, and it spits out a number. That number, if my FTP is 250 watts on the bike, it doesn't mean my run FTP is going to be 250 watts. Those can be very different, and it can be very different between brands of run power. So my Stride says it's one thing, and then Garmin now has it built into their newer watches. They just came out with the 965, and the 955 has it. They can do run power. If you have the Garmin heart rate strap, you can get it on some of the Phoenix ones. Can you get it on yours?
I think I have. Do I have it on mine? I
think so. And then like I can get it on mine. So if I wear that heart rate strap,
because it's got oscillation, left right balance, and all that other stuff on it.
So if I get run power from Garmin and run power from Stride, same time, same run, we're talking a 70 watt difference in what each of them reports. So it's not like you need to pick one and stick with it.
So so that's the follow-up, right? How do you use the run power? So we've all kind of learned to use the bike power, and we know what it is, and if our listeners have questions, they can post them. But how do you use that run power? So you've got a number.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you're looking to increase? Is it something you're looking to be consistent with? Is it something you're looking to be balanced with? Is it like, because we've talked about the fact that it's extrapolated.
Yeah.
It's not like you're measuring a torque.
Mm-hmm.
So as they extrapolate those numbers, okay, so what should be tell our listeners what should be the mindset of how you use that power?
I think you use it exactly the same way you use it on the bike. I think it can guide your workouts. And the nice thing about run power, just like bike power, is you going up a hill. I was blown away how much harder it is to run up a hill once I got the Stride power meter.
So it wasn't hard for you to run uphill?
No.
How much harder it is to run uphill?
Before you had that little pod?
And then he got the pod.
Is it really heavy? It's a really heavy pod.
Really heavy.
It's like 200-pound.
Yep. No, that's the guy running. I didn't recognize how much harder it was going up. Like, yes, it feels harder, but when you put a number to it and you're like, whoa, like just jogging up this hill is putting me 50 watts over my threshold. Same thing going up a hill on a bike. Like, I don't think most people realize how hard it is once gravity starts acting on you, how hard riding a bike up a hill is. And you're like, oh no, I'm doing okay. And then you look down at your power meter and you're like, well, no, not really. Like, I can't do this for that much longer. So the run power allows you to do that. Like, if you want to run the fastest you possibly can for a given distance, the best way to do that is with a consistent power, whether it's on the bike or bike's a little bit tougher because you got like momentum going over hills and stuff like that. But for running, it's pretty much like an even power is going to be the fastest thing. So
is your power 0 when you're running downhill?
No, because you're still moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So power with running sounds useful in keeping your efforts the same over different
terrain,
elevation.
Yeah. It's a really good way to do that. So if again, like we talked about going out for a tempo run, like your tendency probably, if I say go out for a tempo run on hilly or rolling terrain, you're probably going to push way too hard on the hills and not hard enough on the downhills. And if you had a power number or a power range to hit, you'd probably get that effort. You'd slow way the heck down on the hill, up hills, and you'd book it downhill.
I just read an article about that, the right way to run hills. And that's
was that on Triathlete?
Maybe, I forget where it was.
It might have been the Training Peaks.
It was just that people's tendency is to push real hard up the hill, and then you're gassed at the top, and you run slowly, and you actually lose time. Sorry. You should run easy uphill.
Getting very emotional.
And then hills are my favorite. And then run, much faster on the way down. Keep your cadence fast. And
yeah.
So we know that when people overdo it on the run and they don't have a power meter, we just tell them, you overdid it based on your pace or your heart rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you take a look at someone's power and say you overdid it based on the metric that they're using for power.
Yep. Same way as you would on the bike.
So do you think everyone should measure power on the run?
I don't know that everybody should, just because if you're not going to take the time to learn about it, I don't know that it's doing you any good. You know?
Because I think people use power meters in cycling so much more than they used to, and it's become very popular. But in running, it hasn't caught on as much.
Well, running power meters are newer for
yeah.
sure. Also, the difference between them is significant. So like you don't have that, like 300 watts isn't 300 watts, because if you're running at 300 watts with the Stride and I'm running at 300 watts with the Garmin, it's very, very different. And I'm almost going to argue that yes, more people have power meters. I don't think more people train with power. I think people have the power meter and they're like, oh, cool, 350 watts. Neat.
Yeah, I was doing 1,000 watts uphill.
Yeah.
That was hard.
Cool. I don't think that, I think the average person couldn't have too detailed a discussion with you about how they're implementing bike power into their training. I think it's just
nice to have,
nice.
Not a must have.
Yeah. I mean, it's very nice to have if you're getting coached by somebody, especially if you're getting coached remotely by somebody. That's unbelievably important for the coach to have. And then depending on how good the coach is at getting that, like explaining to you, the athlete, what's supposed to be happening and what you should be feeling, and like having those kind of conversations, it could be valuable to you. But
does the power meter also like deduce form?
Yeah. So I can see things like vertical oscillation, how much you're bouncing up and down, how long I'm on the ground for. So you can see things like what changes over the course of a run. You know, so if I'm running and my pace stays the same, but my cadence changes, or my ground contact time increases, or, you know, Stride does something called leg spring stiffness, like all these different metrics that measure like what's your form look like, you know, can be helpful if you start to see patterns in them.
Cool.
Yeah. That was Dorkfest 101 for everybody out there. If everybody's asleep now, you know, congratulations. That was Rich's question.
That was more than a 101. This is like a 300 level.
It might be. Yeah. Sorry.
I fell asleep on the bike.
And it's good to know, even because people might see that for sale and be like, oh, maybe this is something I should get. And, you know, unless you're going to really track it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talk about like with the lactate meter, same kind of thing. Like most people probably don't need it because they're not going to spend the time to learn what it's telling them. And then it's just like, okay, it's another number, but if you're not doing anything with it,
yeah,
save the $200.
I mean, that's where it's good. Just if your coach can interpret it and then tailor your training to it and make you better, then yeah, but like you yourself may not need to know it. Just like trust your coach to
right. And I mean, the nice
data.
thing now, so all the new Garmin watches have it. The Coros watch has it. The Polar watches have it. So even if you're not paying attention to it, it's being recorded. So again, if you work with a coach or, 2 years down the line, you decide to learn about this thing and you read a book and you're like, okay, cool. You have that data stockpiled and it's there and you can go look for trends and stuff in the data. So if you want to know more about running with power, there's a good book called, I think it's called Running with Power by Jim Vance. It's a very good, it's as much or as little info as you want about running power. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I think it's on Amazon.
On Amazon? Okay. Yeah, we'll put up a link.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Anything else about run training, guys? What kind of...
I think we actually focused on it more than 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Tried to go off topic for a little bit.
One last question I'll ask you. How about shoes?
I was going to ask the same thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
All these super shoes out there now.
Super shoes.
Before even super shoes, I feel like in running, and I haven't been running all my life, said it again, but I feel like there's always a trend of like they go from minimalist to maximalist, minimalist to maximalist. You get a book about like running through like mountains somewhere, and it's like you do it barefoot, and then and then you get about how much it improves by running with maximal shoes. And I think it's just important to find what's right for you, and your ability to sustain that race effort for whatever distance you're going for.
I mean, I think you want to get a quality shoe, right? Like I've used to run in like the cheapest shoes I can get, and there's like no support, and that's going to lead to injury. But then you also want to track how many miles you've put on that shoe, so you make sure you change them out.
Yeah.
Because I've also
Mm-hmm.
gotten injuries because I didn't keep track, and then I didn't realize that I had like a 45-degree angle worn out on both sides, and my shoe had like it was like tapered now, and I was probably landing weird at that point. So, shoes do make a difference.
They do.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's different. Like what shoes you like to wear, what fits your foot and stuff. But with the kind of the advent of the super shoe, I think there's now even more of a, do you save that just for race day? Do you use it all the time? And in between, like, where do you?
I think those super, if they have a carbon plate, you shouldn't be running in them all the time.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah. Because I think, was it Lucy Charles who?
She had a hip injury. I don't know if it was from that, but I know they don't allow your foot to flex enough. So if you use them a lot over time, it's not good.
Yeah.
I
don't
have
know
a
if it
pair
was the
and those-
cause of it, but she had said that she was doing like 80 or 90% of her runs in a carbon plated shoe. Yeah.
It's not good.
I think it's a good idea to have, like you said, race goggles. You can have race shoes also, or, those shoes that you use specifically. It's not like you've never run in them, so you should definitely
Right.
break them in
Yeah.
and know what they feel like. But running in them all the time may not be what you want. Then you should have your, shoe that you practice in.
Yeah. I have the ones I use for racing, and that's all I use them for.
Yeah.
I don't know if I do it right, but I tend to wear. I have like a nylon plate shoe, but I've tried carbon plate, and so if I'm doing
which nylon plate shoe do you have?
Yeah.
The Saucony?
yes,
Okay.
whatever that one's called.
Yeah, I forget the name, the model, but they have. It's basically whatever their race shoe is. I think it's even got the same foam and everything, but a TPU or a polymer plate instead of a carbon plate. It's supposed to be a great shoe.
So I wear those when I do my speed workouts at the
Mm-hmm.
track, and then I'll wear my more like non-plated shoes for the longer, slower efforts.
Yeah.
And that's just what I do. And then since I've used them on the track or on a speed workout, my feet are used to it. I know it's not going to cause blisters or anything, and they're broken in. But then on race day, then I'll use that.
Okay.
But I won't take them on my long runs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to have a couple of different shoes you rotate through over the course of a week. I do like the cushy,
Yeah.
soft shoes to wear.
Never a minimalist for myself. Like I tried it once and I was like, this is not for me.
Part of me would like to try it, give it a fair shake and like do a little bit of barefoot work and stuff like that. I think there's some sound logic behind it. But running around here where you're running on a hard surface most of the time, like if we had nice soft trails, that were like dirt road kind of things to run on around here, I think I'd love to try that a little bit more because the ground is giving you some of that cushion a little bit.
Yeah, I tried it on cement.
Yeah, I mean that's
probably not good.
And I've done it where like before a track workout, like I'll do some barefoot drills and stuff on the turf or something like that, and that feels great. And I think it helps dial in your form and stuff like that. But the idea of like running a 10K barefoot or in a minimalist shoe just doesn't speak to me.
Yeah.
Which we now touching upon like the surface that you run on. So, it's a good idea to mix it up between trails and road, or do you keep it all on the road? Do you keep it all on trails?
I think it kind of goes with what we talked about with specificity. Like at the beginning, base season, like run whatever you want to run on. If you have good trails, that's great. I think it builds ankle strength. I think it helps with proprioception and balance and stuff like that. But the closer you get to race day, the more you should be running in similar stuff to what you're going to race on.
And I think when we did the USAT training, they did recommend, like if you're doing volume, if you can get it on softer surfaces, do it just for longevity and health. But like, you do have to train on the road because that's what you're going to be doing at the race. So that can't be like a shock to your system.
Right. And you can do, one day you go run somewhere that's soft surface, but not all your runs could be that.
Yeah.
Or not all your long runs, especially as it gets closer.
Right. So, I think those are good tips. Hopefully we did a good job laying out kind of how to plan your training moving through your run season. Anybody else have any questions or things to add?
I'd say with all three of the topics of like how to train it, if you don't want to think about it, a coach is valuable. Then just let them do it for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Follow their plan. They know what they're doing, and you don't have to worry about it. Just look at what pops up on your workout for that day and just do it. So you don't have to know all this, but it's good to know the thinking behind it, so you understand what your coach is trying to do, and you don't feel like, why am I doing this work? Like,
right. I think it's important to have that either conversation with your coach or whatever, so that everybody knows what's going on and why you're doing stuff. Because you need to have the buy-in. Also, you need to load that workout and be like, okay, this is going to help me do X, Y, and Z. Where if you're just looking at it and be like, all right, today we're doing whatever, cool. Like I that works for a little bit, but I think eventually,
you got to have a purpose and know like this has a purpose and it serves.
Yeah.
Yep.
So whether you get that from listening to our podcast,
Hopefully,
or hiring a coach, hopefully we've
also
done
Or both.
or both.
Or both.
Yeah.
And then even the podcast itself serves a purpose. Like, just listen to this on your long run.
Yeah. All these people are going to go out and talk to their coaches and be like, Marilyn said I should be doing this.
James says just sign up for a marathon.
Yeah.
That's the answer to everything.
Sign up for 4 marathons.
After a race.
You're going to want to sign up too.
I was like you once.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And then how'd you reel it back in?
I kept getting hurt.
I guess I just had to get to that point.
Signed up for everything.
Superman.
Said yes to everything. It's not good. And then you end up not doing well at more than half of, because you just can't. I'm not saying it's going to happen to you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm reckless.
No, you're not.
I want to do it like in the smartest way possible.
Yeah.
But yes. Do I have to do it? No. I'd like to try. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. That wraps up our 3-part series on how to train. Again, if you like this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review, leave a comment. Probably best thing you could do is tell your friends about it, and so that they start listening. Word of mouth is great. And until next time, this has been another episode of the Quad Pod. Thanks for listening. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Next Level Quad Pod. We really appreciate you spending time with us and listening to everything that we have to offer. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review and a rating. Those little things go a long way towards us being able to bring you more content like this. If you'd like to learn more about what we have to offer, please go to our website at goteamnltry.com. There, you can find out about all the different things we provide that can help you reach your athletic potential. Thank you again for finding time in your busy schedule to spend some time with the Quad Pod.